So now it is time to turn over to our featured speaker. So Tom Coleman will be speaking to us about climate disinformation. And Tom currently leads the Chicago Metro chapter of Climate Reality. And previously, he led their electric vehicle and solar energy teams. But I'll let him tell a little bit more about his background. So Tom, over to you.
I'm Tom Coleman. I'm a native of Boston, Massachusetts, and I was relocated to California, Motorola, for about 12 years. And then I came to Chicago in 1995. I'm really focused on, in my career, I worked mostly in manufacturing and in information technology, but always in manufacturing industry. And so I'm certified in process management, which is critical in manufacturing companies, but it should be critical really to everybody. Also certified in change management. And I'll talk a little bit about that because it's critical because we're all about change, right? And I joined Climate Reality Project in 2019. The Chicago chapter about a year later took Al Gore's training, and I think it was March of 2020, just before the pandemic. I think it was the first fully electronic one. And I've been chapter chair since 2021 for the Chicago Metro chapter. Okay, so much about me. So are we ready to go? All right. So we'll talk about the power of disinformation, how fossil fuel disinformation strategy works. Um, we'll talk about how to manage disinformation, terms of tools for human change and tools for communications. Those are both important. Those will be the main focus tonight. And I'll talk about disinformation examples because facts are nice, but we need to really look at how that's done. So I'll give you a thumbnail sketch of that. We'll also talk about disinformation examples for a few solutions. I'll pick energy and I'll pick electric vehicles, which are my specialty. But anyway, it can be used for anything. And then we'll conclude. Now, so I'm leading this presentation here, and so that's about leadership, right? And we all do that from time to time. We trade off. We're leaders 1 minute, we're managers the next. But we're not going to get anywhere unless we manage the situation. Leadership is great, talking about the future, but management's really where it counts. So let's get into this. So disinformation is a plague that now threatens us all. It is the number one threat our civilization faces in the years ahead. And I'm a collector of thoughts of the day. If anybody wants to be on my list, that's fine. Just let me know. But Terry Pratchett said this not long ago. The truth is in a fog in which one man sees the heavenlies and another sees flying elephants. So he's kind of funny, but how truth that is. So I do want to put a plug now for this book, Science Under Siege, which has been written by Michael Mann, a climate scientist, and Peter Hotez, who is an expert in diseases and vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And I just finished this book, and it's a great book because it really talks about anti-science, which is really some of the most important problems that we face today. Now, the quote simply here is kind of an extract from an interview they did on TV where he said the overriding crisis is the rise of misinformation and disinformation, the use of AI to make it essentially go infinite. And unless we get a handle on this and do something about this, we will be unable to tackle any of the great threats and challenges that we face. And of course, from their standpoint, climate change and healthcare and disease is their focus, and they're very worried about that sort of thing. So let's define misinformation and disinformation. First, misinformation is false information that is disseminated regardless of its intent to mislead. So it could be a friend sharing you, hey, I just heard this the other day. What do you think? Could be quite innocuous, and it's fine, but it's very different than disinformation. Disinformation is false information that's intended to mislead. It's intended. There are people with six-figure incomes that are being paid by the fossil fuel industry and other industries to promote their products regardless of the pain it causes for the American people. Sometimes it's called conspiracy theories, myths, falsehoods, deception, and even lies. I like the word lies because really that's what it is. Let's get it right out there. It's not some special thing. It's a lie. So the power of disinformation is it sharpens public opinion. It shapes public opinion in decision making. It spreads faster than truth. Again, Terry's saying a lie can run around the world before the truth has got its boots on. It's now turbocharged by AI and social media like never before, and it undermines trust in government, science, and in the media. It treats science as just another opinion. It's just another opinion in a discussion or in an argument. It fuels division, polarization, cynicism, radicalization, and political violence. It weakens social cohesion and democracy itself, and it's a kind of pollution that threatens society at its core. So now I want to cover some fossil fuel disinformation strategies. They have many strategies, but this one's very important that I'm going to share with you. First of all, a bit of truth from the fossil fuel industry. Some time ago in 1997, this quote came out, and it's verbatim on the screen. And Exxon essentially said, we have 5 to 10 years to make hard decisions about oil and gas and its use. Their scientists were very concerned. In 1978, they said scientists agree that temperatures of 2 degrees Celsius, temperature rise of 2 degrees Celsius or 3 degrees Celsius would alter the biosphere. It's be very serious, as you can see in that quote there. In 1982, Exxon said doubling CO2 would bring 3 degrees C, and we now have a scientific consensus. So that was encouraging to hear about those kinds of things. However, the business people started to see what the scientists at Exxon were saying, and that changed. So in 1989, Exxon said, the role of greenhouse gases is not well understood. In 1997, there's a lot we really don't know about how climate change works, but we have time. 1998, the American Petroleum Institute said victory will be achieved when average citizens understand uncertainties in the climate science. So where did this model, what's the model for this? Because they didn't invent all this. It was really out there. So a model for fossil fuel disinformation really came from the tobacco industry, in my view. Brown and Williamson in 1969 essentially said this quote, doubt is our product since it's the best means of competing with the body of fact that exists in the minds of the general public. Is also the means of establishing a controversy. So I've highlighted a few key words here. First of all, the tobacco industry is basically saying our competition, our product isn't just cigarettes. Our product is doubt. We want to create a product called doubt. And because they're concerned that they're competing with the body of facts. So competition is not just the other tobacco company, it's the body of facts that exists. And a means of establishing controversy is the key objective that they have here. So this is a heavy type of statement in my view. And so the fossil fuel industry has started to establish a lot of that. Now, when you go to the American Petroleum Institute's website and query Lights on Energy, that's their latest program. And essentially what they're trying to do, since I think it was early 2024, and I pulled this down a couple of months ago, I've done about 14 of these climate disinformation presentations within Climate Reality. And we've tried to refine it over time, but essentially they're saying here, energy access is critical, national security is critical, and American infrastructure is critical. And of course, there's always an element of truth to disinformation. Oftentimes that gives them what they believe is credibility, and a lot of people will buy into that kind of nonsense. Anyway, while those focuses are important, we know that they don't mind, doing those things, even if it poisons the American people. So on their website, as of a couple of weeks ago, when I updated this slide, they had a piece that you see at the bottom here that says oil produced off U.S. shores has fewer greenhouse gas emissions than much of what's imported. So in other words, the stuff they do, the stuff they make has less poison in it than the stuff that is imported from outside the country. Now, I think it's interesting that they're actually using greenhouse gases to try and sell it. I think it was January 2024, trying to sell their wares. Now, the world's really changed since the Trump administration has embraced them so completely. And so I expect that this has either already disappeared or it will go bye-bye not long from now. All right. So if we look at this and we say, the Guardian had a good article on this, and in summary, they have this picture here, and the bubbles, the green bubbles, are really saying we need to focus on energy security, which is, of course, what API just said. We are part of the solution. Get that? It's the economy versus the environment. We cannot have both. We can pick the economy, and there's going to be some damage to the environment no matter, we can't have both. And then we are the world's greatest neighbors. And as you look at this picture, is that what you want for a neighbor in the background there, that plant that you see there? People complain about a solar field, but I'd pick a solar field any day, or a few windmills. I'd pick that any day over what you see there on the screen. Now, we make your life work. They keep us warm in the winter time, and they keep us cool in the summer. There are obviously alternatives to the way they do that, though. So if we kind of toss that away and say, this guy Benjamin Franta said at Stanford, he says that this is one of the most successful yet deceptive PR campaigns ever. The strategy is to put as much blame on the consumer as possible. And what he's actually saying there is part of the strategy, if you dive into the detail, is to blame us for their problems. So in other words, the American people want our products. They want our gasoline. They're buying it all the time, and and we're just selling them what the American people want. And in fact, our emissions are really only about 15 or 18% of all emissions come from us. When they put our products in their cars, and pollution comes out, that's on them. That's 80% of the emissions, not us. So as we go along, we say commuters historically haven't had any choice or much of a choice. I did an assessment of electric vehicles over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, I wouldn't buy one. I bought a plug-in hybrid, but now they're ready, and they use disinformation about electric cars and solar panels in order to be able to use old information as if it was new. But consumers really have a choice today, and we can change and we must change because they're not going to help us. So the CEO of ExxonMobil last year said in a Fortune interview, there's a dirty secret about net zero. People, and I quote, people who are generating the emissions need to be aware and pay the price of going to net zero, right? Pay the price. However, he's conveniently leaving out the fact that who is paying for the damages. Of course, we're paying for the damages. It's in our insurance costs and so forth and so on. Who's paying for adaptation, such as maybe New Orleans, the walls to keep the ocean, the sea out of the city? Well, how about who's being held to account for these emissions and their costs? There's no cost to them except the cost to produce their product. We've got to start holding them accountable. In fact, we have a small team working just on that in Chicago. So fossil fuel companies privatize profits over and socialize the cost of those products. And there's one political party who likes to talk about socialism and how the other party is embracing socialism. But if we think about it, both parties are socializing things. In the case of here, they're socializing their costs to the public. So we talk about the cost, and Al Gore does a really good job in his 100 slides, 200 slides of showing pictures of all around the world of the damages associated with climate change, as you can see in this one picture. I'm not going to put any more up, but I think you get the idea and you understand this. But I do want to expose the cost issue to you, and we'll get into the tools and what to do about these things in a minute. So when we look at this, there's various organizations, such as at the bottom of the screen, that say what the costs are. Now, if we embrace what we call in Chicago the electrification pledge. Now, what that means is we don't have to throw away our perfectly good gas car. It's a 2 year, it's still got 2 years on the lease. We're not going to get rid of that. We're going to drive that car for 2 years, but by all means, when that lease is up, we're going to replace it by an electric car. Or if we're going to get rid of our car in a year, we're going to make sure that the next one or our home, the next heating system is going to be a heat pump, heat pump water heater, heat pump clothes dryer, that kind of thing. So with that said, it's expected that the cost, the mitigation cost every year out to 2050 would be about 2% of GDP. And you can see the estimates of what that is. Now, um, you'll see a McKinsey study that says it's more like 8% of GDP. But again, they're counting the capital cost of electric vehicles, and you can't count that. You can count putting in charging stations because that's net increase. But if you're replacing the car with one that's only maybe $1,000 more or $2,000 more than cars, gas cars, you can see that you can't count it that way. So given that, in using some of these references I have here, the damages would be in red here at about 5% of GDP every single year. So if you're a business person and you look at something like that, you say, what a bargain. Well, we've got to avoid this. We've got to invest in this 2%, and we got to avoid this 5%. Now, we can't avoid it all because of things we didn't do in the past. But we need to get on that train. And in fact, if we don't get on that train, that 2% becomes 4%, and that 5% becomes 15% if we wait till 2040. Now, we're hoping, of course, that administrations change and we get back on the IRA bandwagon and different things like that. But even if that happens, let's say in 2028, it's going to take a year or two for the momentum to build again, just like it did with trying to get the IRA off the ground. So anyway, the costs are high. So now we want to talk about the managing disinformation itself. First, we'll talk about the conspiracy theories, a little bit about that, then change management and some tools about change, and then communications tools that will help us combat disinformation. So first of all, a little bit about disinformation. First of all, if we look at this handbook here, contradictions are within the conspiracy theory. It's frequent. So on the one hand, somebody will say, well, COVID-19 is just like the flu. It's no big deal. We don't need masks and all that kind of stuff. Whereas another person will actually say things like, oh no, COVID-19 was engineered by the Chinese to kill Americans. So you have these kinds of things, and I'm sure you see this in the news all the time. It erodes trust. It's nefarious intent, groups acting with malice, and also calling out victimhood. We are persecuted truth seekers. So therefore, as a result of being persecuted, we're going to get back at these people because of what they've done to us. Or we're immune to evidence, or they're immune to evidence such proof of a cover-up. Scientists are, they're being paid by, climate reality and all these organizations to do what they're doing. It's not true. They say it's proof. We say it's a cover-up. And then some psychological triggers, such as the need for certainty, like simple answers to where none exist, or the need to have control of the situation, need for strict alignment to a cause such as MAGA, or projection. I would lie, therefore they must be lying. So we're authorized now to lie. It's okay for us to lie because they're lying anyway. So everybody's lying. Right? Ridiculous, huh? So here's some conspiracy theories, and if some of them seem to be a bit far out, take a look at the percentages. The Earth is flat, 2 to 4% of people, about 13 million people in the United States. Or the 1969 moon landing was a fake. Moon landing was a fake, 10% of people. 9/11 was an inside job, 20%. COVID-19 is vaccine disbelief about the vaccine. JFK assassination was a cover-up. Gosh, we're talking about 160 million people, or close to that. And then belief in the deep state. Well, if you're a Democrat, you might believe that the Republicans are controlling the deep state. If you're a Republican, you might believe the Democrats and George Soros are controlling this deep state. believe what you will about that, but a lot of people believe this. And then we have climate change itself either not happening, 14% of people, or it's not human caused, or 42%, because both of those things are damage. Now, some of you may be thinking that no, 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 belief in climate change is more like 70%. And those statistics are out there. However, a lot of those people that believe in climate change also believe it's not human caused. So they believe in it. They say it's going to be serious, but it's the Earth going around the sun that's changing and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, something to think about. And also, it's being embraced by our government. Our fearless leader, Mr. President, is basically saying, we just won the war on the climate change hoax. Bill Gates has finally admitted that he was completely wrong on the issue. It took courage to do so. And for that, we are grateful, MAGA. Now, those of you that have read what Bill Gates actually said may give you cause to be a bit upset about what Bill Gates said. But he didn't deny climate change, and it's completely untrue what Mr. Trump is saying right here. I have a few problems with it, but we have to walk and chew gum. We have to help poor people as well as deal with climate change. So anyway, this is an example of one pretty far out. So in order to be able to deal with this, we study the science of climate change, we study solutions for climate change, and we study political implications of climate change. But the question is, do we study the science of human change? Now, I've underlined change. There's a lot of word, the change is showing up in three places up at the top of the screen. Now, some people will say, that's boring, psychology, all that kind of thing. I'm not a psychologist. Well, I asked the question, are you a climate scientist? I'm not. But we talk about climate change, don't we? I'm not a solutions. I would say I'm an expert on EVs, but I don't know all the engineering and the science behind EVs. So some people are more politically astute about this. So anyway, we have to touch on this a bit. Now, the only chapter that I know that are doing something about this is the Ohio chapter, because when I made this presentation for Ohio, they invited me back in 2 or 3 weeks, and they did a whole meeting just on the psychology and the human aspects of change. I thought that was interesting. However, anyway, let's touch upon the 7 things. One, fear of the unknown. It's called a status quo bias, and people naturally prefer what's familiar. It helps them feel safe, and it's predictable, and even if it's not. So this is serious. And when we develop, let's say, a presentation or whatever, we have to be aware we're dealing with people that feel this way. They're afraid to buy, say, an electric vehicle because they know that the battery is going to go just like it does on all the other appliances they have. And they're going to have to spend $10,000, $12,000 for a new battery, or they're going to run out of energy on the interstate. Now, again, 15 years ago, this might be some truth to that. Nowadays, it's really not. So anyway, here's the cartoon. Would you like a shovel? No, but I've already got a spoon, so I'm good to go here. Here's another point: loss aversion. We tend to fear losing what we have more than what we may gain as a result of making that change. We have to keep this into consideration, and here's the animation here. So, for example, Tony Robbins talks about the power of pain. Pain generates action in many cases. When it happens to you, you feel like you have to do something. Pleasure, on the other hand, is something that could be far out. It's something that might happen. It's not usually quite as powerful now. So I'm not saying that you ignore pleasure and just deal with pain, but we need to deal with both here because loss aversion is very real to people. Another one would be cognitive dissonance. So change often challenges our existing beliefs or identity, which creates a mental discomfort. So, maybe if you're a Republican, you're against EVs because it's a woke thing and they don't work, or solar panels don't work, or whatever it is. And you have that discomfort if somebody tries to tell you that you're wrong about those kinds of things. A good example might be this one. We have the inconvenient truth, the little echoes of Al Gore's movie some time ago. But nobody's in that line to learn about the inconvenient truth. They're in the reassuring line, reassuring lie line, because they're really they're seeking out ways to deal with their cognitive dissonance. People are telling them and pulling them different ways, and here's a simple solution to the problem, and there are no simple solutions. Now, confirmation bias, on the other hand, it really fits with what I just said, but it fits with it in a different way. This is the tendency to actually seek out and prefer information that supports our pre-existing beliefs. As a result, we tend to ignore any information that contradicts those beliefs. So in this case, we have beliefs on the right.
Oh, thank
We
you.
all have them. And we have all evidence over here. And there's this common ground here of what we might let in. So all the fact sheets and all the science goes nowhere if we are not dealing with the things I've just talked about so far. We have to deal with those things so that science can be let in to the conversation. And I'll explain that a little bit more in just a second. Another one is this thing called creeping normalcy. This is also called gradualism, landscape amnesia, and the boilings of a frog's analogy. So this is a process which major change becomes acceptable when it happens gradually over time. Now, I've been in the change business for all my life. Now, when it comes to change, incremental change is definitely the way to go. If you've got time, do it slowly and carefully, bringing people on board, it's the way to go. The trouble with that is it's really bad if transformation is required. And because of the things we haven't done, we need transformation types of change right now. So that situation is difficult. And so incremental change can be either good or bad. And there's controversy about this, but I feel very strongly about it. Now, the boiling the frogs comes in two different ways. First, the slow changing issue that I just brought up, and the second is denial that change is even happening. So, so you've probably heard of the hot water in the warm water in this pan, and you throw some frogs in, and allegedly they will not drop, they will not jump out, and as you turn the heat up, they will eventually die. But if you threw frogs into a boiling thing of water, they would immediately drop out because it's extreme. So that's trying to be an example of creeping normalcy. This stuff is creeping up on us. Climate change is a creeping up type of thing. And a lot of people think that what happened in the 1980s and 90s in terms of billion-dollar disasters is no different than today. But it's very different than today. And I'll show you in just a few minutes. The next one, number 6, is the illusory truth or the illusion of truth. We come to believe what we hear if it's repeated enough times. This is a very significant weapon, and our adversaries use this all the time. How often do you hear people, especially in political circles, saying over and over and over the same thing? Now, why are they doing that? There's actually a reason why they do it. How true the lie is, sorry for the wording, is on the vertical axis. The number of times we hear the lie is on the horizontal axis. And what happens is the more times we say something, the more people will line up behind us, especially if we're in any kind of position of authority, and tend to believe what it is that we're saying. So this is very significant, but there's a way to use this in reverse, and we've got to use this tool, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The final thing in this change area is that change, excuse me, change is difficult because of money. I don't think I have to spend a whole bunch of time on this particular slide. We all know that money in politics and things like that are really causing a lot of severe problems for our country right now. And certainly fossil fuel companies are getting subsidies now. It's all about money. They're being given subsidies, but they're taking away subsidies from the IRA and so forth. So to make it more imbalanced than it was already. So in summary, I've got the 7 things listed. This is probably a slide you might want to, I'll be sending these PDFs out to Anna and distribute them as you need. And I put my email in the chat if anybody has any questions about this. This is a good slide here because this is something, the next presentation that you're going to work on, you might want to take a glance at these things and say, how can I incorporate cognitive dissonance, for example? It sounds psychological, but it is just as scientific as the science of climate change. And that's what humans are about. So we have this little cartoon here of there's no proof that humans are causing global warming. So I'm just not going to change. And then down here it says the damage is already done. We'll have to adapt, build more seawalls. I'm not going to change though. And then there's hydrogen and technology and AI. It's going to save us as we sit on the roof of our car. I'm not going to change. Okay, as we go underwater, I'm going to change. And this really says a lot of things, but one of the things it says is when the pain gets severe, we will change. But the problem with climate change is by the time that happens, we're talking tipping points. So we have to get proactively get in front of it, which is very difficult to do. So to wrap up this particular segment and move on to the next, I'm showing you a pyramid of barriers to human change. The first one is survival. If we don't deal with survival, like economic safety, fear, loss aversion, and scarcity instincts, we're never going to be able to get action for our cause. And a lot of people are in this situation right now. It's hard to talk to them about climate change because they're having trouble trying to figure out how to pay the mortgage right now because of the shutdown and all these other things happening. However, we have to deal with it. The second one is above that would be identity, political, cultural, and even religious self-determination, tribal loyalty, beliefs and worldview, how the world works, whether we're optimistic people, fatalistic people, and trust in systems. Trust in systems is a huge problem today, and it undermines the science of what we're trying to do. Or cognitive habits such as biases, motivated reasoning, echo chambers. I kind of hit a lot of those things already. On top of that is information. So at level 5, this is often where climate people start. They'll go into, let's say, a solar panel presentation. They'll talk about all the important things and the scientific advantages and the money maybe you'll be able to save associated with going to solar panels. But if all these things 1 through 4 are bothering you, there's a good chance you won't take action. You might say, hey, that's interesting, but you might not take action because top is where action happens. It's it's behavior or action, visible action. So the power of change requires a lot of the stuff all the way up from the bottom. Now, the other thing is facts alone. So what the bottom line of this chart is facts alone rarely change beliefs. It's beliefs that change. Beliefs shape which facts we're even going to let in or accept. Do you all see red lines on your screen? I have no idea what those are. I'm sorry about it if it doesn't mess up the presentation.
We assume a grandchild got in and did that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Anyway, so let's now get into communications, which is the second part of this. So basic debunking process. Basically, the way it works is you have the lie, and then you debunk the lie because you don't agree with the lie. You think the lie is a lie, and you're upset about it, and you get on social media and you respond to the lie. And guess what? When you do that, you propel the lie. You propel it to thousands and maybe even millions of people because debunking is not a good way to deal with the situation. So I want to talk about pre-bunking. So the basic truth sandwich, or it's a version of pre-bunking, is a way to use inoculation. So we don't want to get a disease, so we want to get a vaccine or whatever to prevent us from getting the disease. And that's really what we want to do. We can't stop people from blabbing the lies, but what we can do is not respond to them, and we can put out truth. So first is the fact intro, where we lead with facts and make them clear and make them relevant and so forth. And then we warn people. It's not a real step, but we warn people that we're going to bring out the lies. We're going to be honest about it. It gives us credibility to acknowledge what it is that some people in the room are thinking. They're already thinking that the EV battery is going to die in 5 years and it's going to cost $12,000. So we're going to reveal right here the lies. So that means you need to know something about your audience and what surveys say about what people think. Then we reveal the lie, we flag it, We address the disinformation trust, we reveal the hidden agendas, and we highlight basic disinformation tactics. And then what we do is we close this with the truth again. This is called fact capture. We surround disinformation, we replace disinformation with correct info, and we make corrections that are stickier than the disinformation is. So we're trying to choke out the lie by saying truth twice around the lie, but being honest that there is a lie and there's some logic to that lie. When we do this, pre-bunking is more effective than debunking because debunking lies propels them to billions of people. There's psychological inoculation after we pre-bunk. The process warns of falsehoods, then provides a clear mental anchor called the truth capture. It's also a continued influence effect by reducing disinformation that lingers after the correction because the last thing they hear from you is truth. Number 4, inoculation theory. Pre-bunking aligns proactive immunization within. We're trying to immunize people from the lie. Number 5 is we need to limit. This limits a repetition of falsehoods, and it surrounds the lie. So it ensures truth gets more airtime than the lie by saying the truth once, saying the lie, and saying the truth a second time. And then it frames audience recall because people are more likely to remember the first and last thing that they hear. So really, conspiracy theories and myths and all of that kind of stuff, often stick because they are constantly repeated, the illusory truth. And they meet simple emotional needs, like the fact that they're confused. It's cognitive dissonance. So the best defense is really to embrace the key human drivers of change, some of the techniques I just said, just went over. Fact-filled communications in a truth sandwich. So that would be what we want to do. Now we have to educate people of this. So as we educate our target audiences, we have to educate ourselves. I'm trying to help share what I've learned about all this stuff with you so that you can say, how do I import this? How do I inculcate this into our advocacy in order to be able to take advantage of these techniques and so forth? So education basically drives or leads to understanding, which should lead to action, which should lead to results. And the only problem with that is education has to be pretty specific. So for example, we want the kind of education that generates the type of awareness needed that people know they need to change. It's just not a FYI thing. They need to change. We need the type of education that drives desire to support and take part in the change. If we don't get it, we have to go back to awareness. We didn't get the job done. And then we need a certain kind of understanding related to knowledge and how change happens. Again, if we don't have that, we have to go to desire. If we don't have that, we have to go back to awareness. And then eventually we get to ability and reinforcement. And that's really the process. So education should be a change management process. So in our remaining time, I want to give you a few examples of how to do this. So the first thing is using the not recommended debunking approach. And here it is, the lie. The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive. Climate change is a hoax. That's Mr. Trump. He said that. It's a fact that he said this. The debunking lie might be, not recommended, there is a 97% peer-reviewed scientific consensus that climate change driven by global warming will be catastrophic in coming years if we don't comply with the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Now, I used to do this all the time. I tried to stop doing it. The other day, I did it twice on Facebook, and I really regretted it. It was awful. Okay, so the truth sandwich kind of looks like this, though. Now, again, this isn't perfect. I'm sure you can do better. I would do a whole meeting just on this, on how to do this. But anyway, the truth pre-bunk. Climate change is real, and it's caused by human-initiated emissions of greenhouse gases. Global emissions, temperature rise, and the impact on our economy are all totally in sync with each other, and we have little time to act. Here's the lie. Many important politicians and podcasters claim that climate is not changing or it's simply changing from natural causes. It has nothing to do with us. The weather and climate has always changed. Truth capture. There is a 97% scientific consensus that humans are driving global warming, which threaten our economy and our children's future. For example, the National Academies of Science, American Medical Association, American Lung Association, NASA, NOAA, and about 100 other organizations. And in fact, we might reveal the icons of all these organizations and have links inside the icons in our presentation that drive right out to those websites to show what these organizations believe. It's not just the podcasters and all this stuff. Then we might put up a chart, of course, full screen of each one of these things. I'm doing this quickly for you, of the emissions over time, which is pretty dramatic. And then we might show how carbon dioxide, for example, is accumulating in our atmosphere. This is called the Keeling curve. And how the chart on the left is building up on top of the chart on the right, making it every day more dangerous than the day before. Even if our emissions were the same every day, it would get more dangerous because once it's in the atmosphere, CO2 takes 50 years to go into the ocean, 300 years for the next 20%, 30%, and thousands of years to get the last amount. So it just builds up. Okay, and then we have the temperature rise is associated with these three curves. Notice they all look very similar. And then we could show perhaps billion-dollar disasters, which, of course, a full screen version would be here, that would show how many billion-dollar disasters and how wonderful the 1980s and 1990s were. Well, we had a consistent amount of billion-dollar disasters, and how different it is today. Debunking not debunking, but going after the things we've always had this problem in the past. Okay, so again, we might show something like this. I'm showing it to you one more time. And then here's 5 more examples of climate conspiracy theories that I'm sharing with you. Again, I'm not going to go through them for sake of time. Here they are. We have solutions disinformation examples that I'll share with you. I'll give you one, which is energy. Truth pre-bunk. Solar panels are safe for the environment and for our families. The lie. Solar panels cause cancer. Number 3, truth capture. Solar panels do not emit ionizing radiation, and EMF levels are lower than household appliances. There is absolutely no evidence that solar panels cause cancer. This is a false claim perpetuated by those that are trying to deprive nearly free energy for our families. See, the petroleum industry repeatedly sells gasoline to you, right? Forever. But solar panels going up on your roof, like I have on my roof, it's free. It's almost free energy after that happens. They don't like that, right? All right, so here's 6 more that you could do for energy. This one I highlight. Wind turbines kill birds, right? They do. But cats kill more, buildings cause more, and fossil fuels cause more. Okay, here's a few more disinformation pre-bunking things. I'm just giving you a list of the things you might want to consider. And then the last one I have here is electric vehicles. Truth pre-bunk. Modern EVs cost less than their gas car counterparts. The lie. No. Compare the cost of a Chevy Equinox gas car to an EV version. The EV costs $5,600 more. 59% of the American people believe that EVs cost too much money. Oh, really? No. Truth capture. The Equinox EV costs $8,700 less than the gas version, not counting any tax credits, which are now gone. Well, how do you get that? Well, let's compare the cost of buying the car, $28,000 versus $33,000. Let's compare fuel costs of $14,000 over 8 years to $6,000 for electricity on an average grid. Maintenance, $12,000 versus $6,000. And a hybrid costs more than a gas car, by the way. Total cost of ownership, $54,000 versus $45,000, or a savings of $8,700. And if you're on solar, it's $14,000 in savings. So I'm doing this rather quick so you get a sense of how you might attack this. So I'll skip this because we're out of time. I'm giving you examples like I did on the others. Let me just summarize on this last slide by saying debunking is a reactive tool that propels disinformation. Debunking is a proactive tool that combats disinformation. The truth sandwich surrounds and chokes disinformation. Studying climate change is not enough. We need to study human change in order to unlock the solutions of climate change. Debunking and change enabling tools must be integrated into our advocacy and education. The reverse, illusory truth, is important to propel belief, the message of belief forward. Repeat, 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 repeat. We have to do it. And then finally, if we do what we've always done, we'll get what we've always gotten. So anyway, thanks. I know this is kind of a whirlwind tour, but it's a complex topic.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. That's super interesting. Now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And I think we're a small enough group that you can feel free to just unmute yourself and make questions or comments. All right, well, I'm going to start with a question then. So, Tom, I'm curious, what exactly are the folks in Ohio doing to with your help or with your guidance?
So first, I'll answer it with the Washington, D.C. chapter. I've visited them twice. What they're doing is fantastic. They're getting on Truth Social, believe it or not, and they're using pre-bunking on Truth Social. That was about a month or so ago. I'm not sure how they're doing because it must be brutal over there on Truth Social. But anyway, they're actually extremely serious about this. In the Ohio group, they listened to what I had to say and they said, oh my gosh, this human change stuff is important. In fact, we got somebody coming in a month. Tom, if you want to join us. So I don't know what they're doing about pre-bunking or human change management. I know they had a psychologist there, and that's all she talked about. And it seemed very interesting to everybody, including me.
Thanks. Yeah, Betsy, go on ahead.
I just have a question. I'm confused about the difference between debunking and the the second part of the pre-bunking. You know, you pre-bunk and then you have the lie, and then it's to me it sounded like the thing that followed that was debunking, but it's not labeled debunking. Is that right? Is the
No,
difference just that go ahead.
so if you're on social media and you see something that's untrue that's being said, and you respond and say, that's not true, this is the truth, that's debunking. So we
Okay.
don't want to do that, so never do that. Now, pre-bunking would be you get on social media and you tell the truth, and then you reveal the lie, and then you tell the truth again. And there's a good chance that if somebody tries to debunk you, that will propel you to thousands of people. You want them to debunk you because debunking is not a good thing. Donald Trump long ago said, good
Okay.
news and bad news about me. I love it because it propels me into the media to billions of people. He loves that, even though he complains about it. So in a sense, there's something they're using tools. The adversaries are using the tools that we're not using. It's not just about politics. That's only part of what we try to do. Okay. I hope
So
that
it
helps.
sounds like am I understanding correctly then that rather than responding to people
Yeah,
who
you
are
don't.
making what?
No, you never respond to the people.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Instead
you
of
say it.
doing that, you just come right out and say it before they
Yeah.
even get a chance to say it.
So, for example, I'm on Facebook a lot, right? So I get on there and I see people debunking each other and it just propels it. So if anything, what I'll do is I'll get on and I'll tell the truth. And I'll wait for somebody to debunk me, which will propel my message to thousands of people. Because people love controversy. Okay. Oh, they want to, everybody wants to weigh in, right? So you want them to propel your original message. And so the
Okay.
truth
Yeah.
sandwich, pre-bunking is not the truth sandwich. It includes, pre-bunking is included in the truth sandwich. The truth sandwich simply says, rather than you tell the truth and they debunk you and propel your message forward, it surrounds it with truth, two versions of the truth. A simple version, you reveal a lie, and then you reveal truth again, and you hope they debunk you. All the psychologists say this is a way to go, and I got
It makes
references.
sense to me.
Yeah,
It makes sense to me. Yeah.
but it's going to be really hard. I'm talking to 14 climate reality groups and some other groups. It's going to be really hard for climate reality groups to embrace the things I've said today because it's so different than what they do today. Okay, so in other words, in our group, we have a lot of work being done in politics. And I'm okay. We have a whole team, political team. I'm okay with that. But it's just not enough. Okay. The reason why politicians don't do what they do is because they don't understand. They're not educated enough to do the right thing, or it's money. It's all the things I just talked about tonight. That's why politicians. So, what we need to do is get in front of politicians and actually spend meaningful time in our advocacy with them so that later they will vote for the right stuff. Politics lobbying isn't just is wrong or it's not enough. Let me say it that way.
Julie?
Hi, Tom. My background is in informal STEM education, and I have a son who is just in his first year of teaching high school in earth science and biology. And so I kind of, as I have conversations with him and his work and working with students, I don't know if you've had the opportunity. I try to think, what is climate reality's role in working with youth and getting them engaged and helping them to understand many of the messages you have as they move, get them excited about science. I talked to my son Max about, you're doing incredible work and this is important for future scientists, and kids get discouraged. It's a really ugly political time and they get disillusioned about even kind of being in the fields. But do you ever have the opportunity to work with
Yeah,
youth
well,
groups?
so we fought hard for K through 12 climate education in Illinois. So I mean, I think it's really important to get in front of that with the kids. You know, we also we have one person who deals with regenerative agriculture and different things like that, and she's everywhere trying to help kids understand how to do things right when it comes to, like, don't plant lawns. Like my lawn is a regular grass lawn, just like all the other neighbors, but hers isn't. And she tries to help people understand how it should change. Here's another thing, just really quick. I'll say it's very important to really get in front of this because, for example, you need to prioritize what's most important. So if you go on Project Drawdown, there's 80 things that you could do. The question is, what is the most important thing? If you could only do two things, what would the two things be? And would it be enough? So, for example, a lot of people say, well, in the transportation area, we need to get jet planes out of the sky. We have to get efficient jet fuel. But wait a minute, planes are only 10% of transportation emissions. And transportation emissions are 28% of all emissions. That's number one. Energy is number two at 25%. So if it's 28% and of that, 10% of it's jets, you will not find the Chicago chapter working on jet planes. We won't work on trains, although we are for public transit, all right? But we're not going to worry about the diesel that's being used in the trains. What we're concerned about is our cars are 59% of all transportation emissions. Our SUVs, our cars. And less than half of that, 24% of transportation emissions, are school buses and trucks. So we work on school buses and trucks and regular people's cars. We ignore all the other. I don't know if that helps.
Julie, there's an organization in Minneapolis called Climate Generation. I don't know if they're still active, but they publish a series of educational things called, I think it's called Teach Climate or Climate Tips. It's about education and teaching kids. So that might be worth following up.
Yeah, thank you. I am familiar with them, and that's a
Yeah.
great recommendation. Yeah.
That's Will Steger's group.
Yep. Yep.
Last night, I sat in on a presentation with a California chapter on a similar subject, and their approach to it was, very much like you, don't engage diehard fossil fuel advocates. But they said to focus on people that are concerned about climate, but not motivated enough to do anything about it. And so that was their advice. So,
I think you're right. I mean, independents and many Democrats are going to be more open to the truth. Okay. And why work on the people that will never change? They're just never going to change, right? So we work on independents and we work on, I hate to say it, Democrats. We're not supposed to be political, right? Oh, well.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the same issue that from what we've been following, the Yale communication is kind of saying that there's fewer and fewer deniers every time they survey. So just don't waste your time on just, and work on that activation piece, because a lot of people just don't know where to start or get overwhelmed, don't know what to do. And just wanted to throw in there also is at the University of Minnesota, the Center for Climate Literacy, which is working on K through 12, kind of from the literature story end of it, weaving in climate. So there's that. We're blessed here.
Yeah.
Anyone
Anything
else?
else?
One of your slides showed a sort of staircase, and the facts were right at the top. And I think you were implying that you need the other pieces in place before you talk about facts. Did I get the right idea?
Yeah, that's the right idea.
Yeah,
tried
so
to-
I was wondering, how do you tackle the lower parts? Is that possible or not?
Well, some of the tools I talked about, illusory truth and so forth, you'll see in the pyramid. Okay.
Okay.
So be aware of those things. So when you get the PDFs, take a look at things I said. Not all of the 6 things, I think, or 7 things that I brought up, not all of them are in the pyramid, but they're in one of the things in the pyramid, but some are called out specifically in the pyramid. The pyramid I tried to do a pyramid in PowerPoint. I couldn't do it. So I did the steps. Anyway, but you have to be aware of all of them. You can't start with the science and go up one level. It's just not going to, it works for some people. People scientifically oriented will respond to that. But a lot of people don't care about the science. It's about emotion. It's about the pain. They can't make the mortgage. That's what it's about for them.
I was just thinking that if I talk to my neighbours about having an electric car, I don't say that I got an electric car because I'm terrified about climate change. I got it because it's fun to drive. I love it. It's efficient. It's economical. It's cheaper.
Yeah.
I talk about those sorts of things rather than, positive things rather than climate change.
The last thing you probably want to say is emissions, because depending on who you're talking to, they may not care about it at all. So I always bring up total cost of ownership. Are you kidding me? The car costs $3,000 more than the gas car, but over time, I'm just going to save I'm going to save $1,000 a year by driving this thing. Oh, really? I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, don't look at the purchase cost. The purchase cost is dropping, so that they're only $3,000 or $4,000 difference right now between gas cars and EVs. Only $3,000 or $4,000. So I have all kinds of TCO charts I can share with you. I did a quick one tonight, but you have to look at gasoline is expensive compared to electricity in most parts of the country. Not all, but most. In Illinois, definitely, we have a lot of nuclear power, and I'm on solar, so it's very cheap. 104% of my power we have 2 electric cars, 104% of my power comes from my roof. It's equivalent to 700 trees in my yard. I can't put 700 trees in my yard, but I can put solar panels on my roof and drive 2 electric cars. And I'm not done yet. I mean, I haven't done the heat pump because that was only 5 years. My gas heater was only 5 years old. So again, the electrification push is that I'm not replacing that gas heater with another one.
I think the point that was made about talking about the cost of cars rather than emissions. What you just said, if you talk about the car and what you can save, and then it leads right into putting solar in, because once you've got the electric car and you're saving on that, you put the panels on your roof. That's what I've got. You've got a storage thing. It's all you're just, it kind of multiplies. It goes together and makes it really make sense to people. And that's what we talk about in our Rotary group, is that is the cost saving. And
I just
yeah.
speak about, I do mention emissions, but it's usually the last thing I bring up in an
Yep.
EV presentation. I do bring it up, and I have a nice chart that shows the gas car's average emissions. The hybrid car is half that. The plug-in hybrid is about half that, and the EV is like half that, and the EV is almost zero if you're charging, from let's say renewable energy sources.
One thing I was going to say about the youth, we have a RCAT, Rotary Climate Action Team, and one of the men in there started working with our youth exchange students that are in our club, and they each chose a project that aligned with their country. And so they said, what is something that is an issue, a climate issue in your country? Researched it. They're working with college students in town and do some presentations, and then they'll bring it back to their country. And I thought, if we could get youth, in our schools, have them choose a project that they think is important, research it, and they become the experts. They come up with the facts. They talk to their parents. They promote this. I think that's a wonderful way to kind of get this thing going. So we're really excited about that. We think it's a great project.
But part of that, have them check what the emissions are for the various projects, because the amount of emissions could be important. Like I said, if you look at ships, I think they're 5% of transportation emissions. It's pretty small. So we're not going to, in Chicago, we're not going to worry about ships.
Yeah.
We'll worry about our cars and our buses, especially school buses, because of the pollution, let alone the greenhouse gas emissions. You get the pollution coming out of those things, right?
Yep.
For our kids.
Yep. Good point.
One of the most powerful things we could do is lead by example, as many of you are doing. Get that heat pump, electrify your gas appliances, and tell your neighbors about it. And I'm seeing it work, and people see what you in the backyard and they want one. And you tell them how much you save and they want it. So
exactly. And what you can do is you can make a list of all your appliances, right? You can say, well, okay, the water heater is going to last 12 years. Geez, our water heater is 10 years old. So in probably around 2 years, we got to be ready to replace that with a heat pump water heater. Well, that's exactly what we've done. So I'm either going to replace it this year or certainly next year, because the thing is out of time in terms of average lifespan. So either you wait until it's gone but you got to be ready. So we plan for what we're going to do. I've already researched the water heater, so.
I've read that some real estate companies, I'm not sure how widespread it is, have a climate record or something when you sell your home, and you can get, depending on who's interested in it, that may be a real incentive for people to buy your home. It's getting more regulated. The other thought I had would be to do lawn signs for people who have done electrification. Home of the induction stove, home of the
Catherine, we just
like an oven.
Catherine, we just launched a program in Decatur here called Electrify Decatur. And our goal is to get 250 households on the path, take pledges. And as Tom is saying about, when your water heater is going to go, you're already well ahead of the curve, thinking about it, knowing, where to go to get it, which contractors to use, that sort of thing. We've even got a $150,000 city clean energy fund now that will help. We're at the point of all of our public buildings are going to be powered by clean energy by 2035, I think. And the money we're saving now goes into this fund, and the fund is used to help residents make the conversion at the same time. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's great.
Right.
And Catherine, I do like what you're saying about put up signs saying, hey, we, electrified home or on the path, whatever, because
Yeah.
it kind of normalizes it that
Mhm.
that hey, this is not just, freaks that are putting in a
Right.
a heat pump. Like, no, it's your friends and neighbors. It's all
Mhm.
around. You're surrounded by it. It's, you don't need to be
Mhm.
afraid.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be careful of contractors, though. Many of them don't want to sell the, renewables because they don't know anything about them. And because basically it's a change management issue again. They don't want to, they didn't want to learn about them because, that's a problem. And same thing with dealers, like car dealers. A lot of them have no interest in selling EVs unless they have to. Why? There's almost no maintenance after you buy the thing. I mean, what you're not going back for oil changes, spark plugs, tune-ups, all that kind of stuff. You're not doing that, right? So it could put dealers out of business. I'm sorry, if we get off coal, it's going to put trains out of business because half of them or something are coal trains now. Well, whoops, got to happen though.
Right. Oh, Jen, go on ahead.
Well, oh, sorry. I have two audios going. Okay. I just wanted to say that my big takeaway from the presentation is like, okay, do more proactive posting. If you're on social media, be proactive, use your method as opposed to reacting to other people's crazy posts, because that's
Yeah.
not going to go anywhere. And also I wanted to, so like, that's outside of my comfort zone, but we have to be brave, right? If we're going to be on social media talking about climate change.
Oh yeah.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to say is that we should get all of your materials, Tom, whatever you're
Yeah, I'll
willing
send
to
it.
share, at least with this group. And I like the registration, the people who registered for the event, just send that out ASAP. So thank
I'll
you.
send it out. I'll send the PDFs out tomorrow. PDF out tomorrow.
Yeah. Earlier, Anna had mentioned that the federal tax credits are ending at the end of this year. In case you didn't notice, Minnesota is finally going to start its rebate program at the end of this year. So check Realty Hub for the latest information there. We'll know more in late December. So
Yeah, you can be sure we will keep you updated as we learn more. All right. Anything else? Oh yeah, Abdul Basit, go for it.
Thank you. I'm new into this chapter, but I'm very interested. I learned a little bit much of the presentation. And what I also add on social media, at least you should know what you are talking about, because some people are there, although they know it, but they pretend like they just don't want to how to put it, they just don't like how the climate activity are going around, although they have the knowledge. So if you are going to talk about anything, the positive side, you should know what you are talking about. That will give you more confidence and more knowledge to be able to speak out. Because if you don't know what you are talking about, they will override you on social media.
I think you're absolutely right. Not only so, if you're talking to somebody about EVs, you should know something about it, And the other thing is, um, same thing with heat pumps and everything else. You should know. You should also know what the target audience, what they're thinking. You may not know specifically what that person is thinking, but you got to know what surveys say people think. In my presentation, I said 59% of people thinks electric vehicles are too expensive. That's a fact. 59% of the people believe that. So I have to know that when I'm talking to people so I can blow it up. In other words, they're just misinformed.
Great. Anything else?
Well, thank you, Tom. That was great. So
Yeah, thanks
Okay.
so much. All right, well,
Presentation.
everyone, I encourage you to go out and look up at the night sky and see if you can see that aurora borealis
Go on
tonight.
out, give it a look.
And again, thank you so much, Tom. Thanks,
Okay,
everyone.
thank you.
And
you.
hope to see most of
Thank
you
you.
in December in person. All right, good night, everyone.